Welcome to today's podcast. Dustin and I are so excited to share with you an incredible conversation we had with the amazing Kimmy Gerrie. It's a beautiful story of overcoming obstacles, hardship, difficulty, isolation, even trauma, and her ability to connect with her own intuition and finding a path forward and a way to heal herself, really choosing and finding her own direction forward. Outside of what culture or doctors or others suggested she do, finding a path of really connecting with that power within. With that, we'll jump right into it. Thank you.
Yeah, so can you share a moment when you felt completely disconnected from your purpose and how you found your way back?
Yes. So this would have been what's coming up is in my mid-20s. I had just moved to Utah and had gone through, I think, what would be considered one of the most traumatic things you could go through. But I just kind of moved out here on an impulse a month after that event happened and kind of knew I was running, but also knew I needed to escape the place that it all happened. And it was where I was from. So I just kind of was seeking refuge in the mountains and in the playground that I knew Park City to be. I'm in Park City, Utah. And within 2 months of moving here, I've always my whole life wondered and paid attention to signs, even as a little kid. Like there's a penny on the street. What does that mean? It wasn't just like, oh, money. The bluebird, what does that mean? And I went off this jump on a bike. We were dirt jumping. I was actually with Jesse Wild. You guys know Jesse.
Oh, that's so cool. You were with him?
Yeah, we're
Whoa.
both from back east, so we knew each other. He was the only one I knew when I moved out here.
Okay.
No way.
And
Wow.
yeah, so we were going, and he said to me, there's
Wow.
3 courses at the top of this dirt jumping park. And
Yeah.
mind you, I'm not all there. Like at this point, if I wasn't at work, I wasn't really sober. I was also like just running with substances. It was fun. And I had no limit. And so we were at the top of these jumps. There's 3 courses on the way down, and it's like easy, middle, intermediate, and expert. And Jesse's going to go down the expert one with his friend. And he said, you can't do this. Go down that way. And I was like, what do you mean I can't do this? So they took off and I'm looking at the jump and I'm like, it's like this little ramp. And then it goes over and then it goes down. And then it's just flowy. It's just a little bigger. Little did I know the down part was not there. It was just a gap. I didn't know how to bunny hop a bike yet. So what happened was I actually scorpioned down the landing of that when I took off and I ripped my face. I have got like 40 stitches or something in my gum line here.
Oh my God.
I look like the Joker. I'll share that picture with you guys sometime. It's really fun. So that was like my first like, hey, are you listening?
Whoa.
Like you're not paying attention. And I didn't. It took me actually a couple of years of patterns like that, whether it was skiing into a tree without a helmet on, some other crazy things that were really fun on skis, but like skiing off of cliffs that were far bigger than I would have done in my right mind. And then I got to the point, like I just kept pushing and pushing. I got to the point of skydiving, but I was living out of a camper at this time. I called it my home free stage. It seemed like it was all cool, but I was really like isolating. And people didn't really see that. So I was living in the skydive drop zone parking lot actually. And
Whoa.
I wanted to learn how to skydive, kind of with the intention of someday maybe not pulling the parachute. Just kind of wanted that choice, but also was like, let's do this. Like I'm coping with adrenaline right now. And it was fun. So little did my instructor know about that secret intention I had right before the first jump after 4 hours of ground school training. She turned to me, speaking to like any malfunction that could have happened with my parachute on that first jump. She said, Kimmy, do you trust yourself to save your own life today?
Goosebumps.
I sat like it was just like a wave hit me. And
Yeah.
if your spirit guides, the universe, your higher self, whatever it may be, if that, I couldn't get any louder. Like and I asked her later, I'm like, do you ask that question to everybody? And she's like, no, I just asked that to you. I asked my boyfriend years later, who also worked at the drop zone, is this a question you guys ask? No, it just came through for me before that first jump. And it was interesting because you guys may have heard this a little bit at trainers training, but when I took that first jump after taking a walk, like I did not go for the first plane ride. I took a break and thought about it. But man, when I jumped out of that plane and I pulled the parachute, because your instructors actually let go of you when you pull the parachute, it's up to you to get yourself down. And I saw that parachute inflate over me. It felt like my lungs in every cell. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but the lungs in every cell might be, and like the light went on, and it was like this choice to be here again. And it was so fun. Like, I was screaming. People thought something went wrong, but I was just celebrating, like, so big under my parachute. And so that was sort of like, yeah, kind of like my rebound moment from what I would have considered rock bottom back in.
So I'm curious too, like, so I did hear a bit about that when we met, and I also have a very intense story to share as well, like to honor and have some empathy on just how wild life's journey can get, and also the massive silver linings that come with that. I feel like some of the most amazing people I've ever met, and I actually heard this as well. I think it was Dave Chappelle or Joe Rogan or something talking about like the coolest people, the most interesting people that they know in their life do not come from a easy childhood, or like there's massive beauty in that depending on how I think you approach it. And then despite on how you approach it, you're going to be interesting regardless, because you've had more typical unique experiences. So like I was wondering too, so like that moment, oh my god, I almost teared up, and I you just give me goosebumps multiple times. Is so that moment then, so like how you found your way back. So like when that parachute opens and you feel like the cells of your body, your lungs, air, life, like when you then landed, or maybe the ride down or the landing, like is there anything else you can share about the profound or the beauty, or maybe it was just really simple and it was just like a knowing, I don't know, but how that did help you be like, whoa, purpose, life, I'm back. Like, what was that part like? Because that part I think is really, really interesting to me.
Yeah. So I can back up a little bit, because this is kind of a cool piece, and it'll segue into something maybe unexpected around the earthing that you started asking about. So about a month before this, I had thought I was losing my fucking mind in the camper. Mind you, we need connection. It's our primary human need, is connection. I was living in the middle of nowhere with my Tibetan Mastiff. So I had some company, but no like really human connection. Yeah, in this camper, just really isolating. And at the same time, my nervous system, something lit up. And this is actually what drew me into astrology, because I was seeking answers. I ended up going to a mental health specialist and getting diagnosed, medicated. And like to the point where months later, I realized or when this question was asked to me, I was also like not feeling too well, and realized like actually that if anything, those medications were what was going to not help me save my life. And were making me feel worse. So I knew that label was off. And it never really resonated, because the man hadn't even asked me about the trauma, right, that I had been through. And so I was like, weird how you can just give me like a bunch of these medications to try. And he was like, try different doses. It was scary. Like, it was like, this doesn't feel right. You know, in your gut sometimes when something is just like, but you're like listening to advice outside of you. And it's like, I don't care what degree, certification, whatever you have, you still know better than that person, because if it's in regards to you and your well-being. And that's a big lesson he taught me. So when I landed, I realized, one, on the way up, I was feeling drowsy and I was like, whoa, like these medications have to go. Like that was just like starting to trust my gut after that question was asked. And then when I landed after my whole party in the sky, I was like, I kind of teared up, but it really was this wave of knowing. And it was almost like this fire that turned on to like get on the dragon that felt like my life at that time and fucking ride it. Like, stop waiting for the next person to come and help you. Go help yourself. No one's coming to save you. And I think that was huge for me. So I actually left the drop zone that day and I called intuitively. Like years prior to this, my mom had mentioned something about Qigong. And I was like, yeah, cool. I'm young. Like, why I can run and shit. Why would I sit there and do this? You know? Why am I gonna do? I could do that when I'm 70. I just intuitively looked
funny.
up like local Qigong master, Salt Lake City, and I knew that for some reason I was like, he can help me. So I scheduled with him. He's like, why don't you come join a group class? I'm like, I need a one-on-one with you. I'm pulling myself off all these medications that you're supposed to ease off of and work with doctors. Like, I have respect for physicians, and at the same time, there's a time and a place, and I think there's certain people out there that just give really poor guidance. So I lost trust and kind of threw it to the side for a minute and was like, no, the earth and the sky and everything in between in terms of creation is going to help me right now, but I'm done with Western medicine. And I learned that Qigong is actually one of the 4 pillars of Chinese medicine. So it was really cool because that was where my whole journey with Qigong began. And that was around 9 years ago now.
So you've been doing that ever since?
I've been doing it ever since. At first, because one of those prescriptions that I was on, you guys are not going to believe this. I was taking Adderall for years through college, but this man had said, up the dose to 20 milligrams every 4 hours, 24 hours a day.
Oh my God.
I was on the verge of a heart attack. I was self-medicating with so much cannabis to just like even it out. I felt like I was going to fly out of my body. Like it was absolutely nuts.
No kidding.
Whoa.
So think about this, like being on a stimulant for, 8 years or something prior to this experience of going cold turkey off of that, mood stabilizers, antidepressants, all of it at once. I needed something. I was drained. And so this Qigong practitioner master, what he taught me was actually there's a segment of Qigong that is considered medical Qigong. And just like dosing yourself with medicine, you can take a half an hour of Qigong 4 times a day, 2 times a day. And so that's what I did at first. It was like a half an hour to an hour of Qigong 4 times a day. And by pulling in the earth energy from my feet, from around me, like from the sounds and the feel and the elements in nature, and also through source, through Father Sky, I was just like, wait, why do we use medicine? Like this stuff is so powerful. And I just felt so happy and so empowered that I was doing it. I didn't need to go have someone give it to me. Like I was cultivating that in my practice.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, so that was the beginning.
I'm really interested in that time, like that switch too. You spoke so much about the isolating that was going on. Did that start to shift in that too when you entered back into the Qigong, caring for yourself in the nature and realizing like what you could gain from obviously nature? But I was wondering like how that shifted in the community sense too, or did that come later?
Good question. Yeah. So this was about, I think, 2 years into maybe a year and a half living in the camper. And it was like the skydiving happened, the Qigong started, and then boom, I was renting a home again. I needed shelter. Not to go too far into astrology, but actually that was a really cool part because it was like within this time frame too, I hired an astrologer and I was like, this is just, astrology is not anything, but maybe she'll have an answer because the doctor sure didn't know what was going on. And she, within 6 minutes, spoke to something that was, she said, have you checked yourself into like a crazy house lately or felt like you needed to go to one? And I was like, how the fuck did she know? Like, how did she know I thought I was going crazy? And she told me what it was astrologically, and that it was activating my chart right then. And then, 10 minutes later into the reading, I was like, 6-year-old Kimmy has been waiting to hear this her entire life. I need to learn. Like, so I signed up for astrology school.
Nice.
And so that was, my reading was like my first day in this home that I had moved into. All of this was happening at once. It's like the dominoes lined up. And yeah, I would say I started to find my community and my people at that point through the courses, like the astrology courses, through the Qigong community. And actually I would go to Qigong classes in old age homes to keep connecting with my teacher who was teaching courses there, because I wanted more than the one-on-one.
Yeah, so awesome.
And I would still do things outside, but I really just didn't have the energy for it. I had started a relationship at that time that that was largely based in the mountains, and it was really interesting because we were doing a lot of climbing and eventually would be doing some backcountry skiing, and man, it just took some time to adjust to getting my energy back to a place to be able to do that.
Yeah.
God, that's amazing. Like once that, it sounds like once that shift happened, like that skydiving moment too, just like the confluence of starting to heal from so many different directions, starting to see the beauty that was inside, but like reflected in all these different places. I don't know, I'm really touched by that. I mean, your story is so moving.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So moving.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't really have a question with that. I was just
thanks.
Yeah, I've got like so I think kind of similar where you're like, you guys may have heard some of this at trainers training. But I think there's a few things that I really want to honor in what you shared, and honor your vulnerability as well. Because I haven't shared these details on the podcast, that's for sure. But it is going to be in my book I'm writing. And like, this is one of the things where I think there's such a good lesson here in vulnerability and how that is intrinsically linked to intimacy and connection. Like, I feel like a parrot repeating that here and there on this podcast, because the moment, so for those who are listening, the three of us met at that 3-week training. It was wildly intense. We're learning how to public speak. We're facing our baggage, our emotions, our fears, our courage, all the beauty. People are crying. People are freezing on stage, everything in between. And Kimmy, you were in one of my groups. I actually had the honor of being in a group with each of you for the first 2 weeks. And you shared some of this. And then you shared how you like were on this up in the mountains skiing, like hiking cliffs, like this crazy skiing competition you were in. You're like totally right. And I'm like, dude, this like who is this woman? Like, what's going on right now? But when you shared some of what you just shared with us right now, I started tearing up because of what I've been through and what I've gone through, and getting very close to ending my life as well about 8 years ago, and then going to like a mental rehab place to like, hey, like, and that was my choice of like, hey, I'm like so disconnected from life. I'm so just, and I was isolating a lot as well. Like there's a freakish amount of similarities on principle, I think, that like you're saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I think there's massive learnings here. Because after I was also a little isolated, but then I started kind of connecting with people and doing more yoga and different things and slacklining and stuff, and and then I traveled the world. But like, what I think is so beautiful about this, several things. One thing is, I'm curious if you believe this. Like, if you wouldn't have had that moment, if you wouldn't have had that struggle, if you wouldn't have had that darkness, that death, I don't believe you would be doing so much of the cool stuff you're doing today with the passion you have to work with kids and families and to help other people. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, I think it's all intrinsically connected, like the light and the dark, right?
Oh yeah. And speaking to everything being connected, I think now we're ready to go closer to the depths of the open ocean. But I would say the real catalyst of this, and man, I was always like a very like intimate, deep, curious child. It wasn't even cute when I was like 2 and 3 years old. Like I would go up to strangers in the grocery store and hold on to their hands or offer them hugs, and they would start breaking down and they would be like, how does she know? And they were like going through something. I didn't know. I just knew that they needed some love, and kids are pure, love.
Wow.
It's not just me. This is why I love working with kids, but like, it was so funny because I lost touch with that vulnerability. I learned through, programming, childhood trauma, the things that was my thing was like, in my German family, it's like emotions are weak. And I'm highly emotional, but I'm also highly intuitive. And I had lost touch with that to the point where when I was 24, I just returned from a 3-month long road trip with my dog, and we were living in my dad's house, and I didn't know, like I thought he was just sick with the flu. I thought, and speaking to like being disconnected with intuition, like something was aggravating me about how he was acting. I was like, I just kept, noting it as he was sick until one day I'd gone for, it was 2 weeks. I was home. I didn't leave the house after this road trip. And I went to lunch and I returned home and he had committed suicide. And I found him.
Whoa.
So yeah, he was also notably like the closest person in my life in terms of having that intimate connection and those deeper conversations. So that was a moment where I had also lost my path, lost that connection with my greatest gift, which is this like deep intuition and ability to drop in.
Yeah.
And I had like a weird lapse of time where I let people know right away, but no one showed up for about an hour. And I intuitively like talk about signs. I knew that was for me. I was like, whoa, like we are the closest people in each other's lives. And like, this is something for us. I also had a moment kind of screaming and at the top of the staircase. And I remember to my left, I could see down these dark stairs and I could like see the path that I could take. This was like also a divinely guided moment because I wasn't, obviously you're not there. And it was sort of like, you could go this way. And, I saw like just your life going to absolute shit because of this. Or you could go this way, or you could go another way is what it said. The voice said another way. And it took my gaze out to the tops of the pine trees to the moon. And I didn't like that, just planted a seed. Obviously it took me a couple of years. Like I spoke to that running. The month later was when I moved out to Utah. And so it took me some time to find my way. Ironically, when I first moved to Utah, I started teaching at a school called Another Way. And so speaking of how everything's connected, like there was I was literally like on, I don't know, angel's wings, or I don't even know. I was just so carried through this, even though I was very alone. I have no family out here. And so there's even more to that Another Way school, but I want to circle back to your question because I went down a rabbit hole there.
Oh, the
and
rabbit
I can't
holes
even
are the
remember
best,
what it was.
I
Yeah,
love
that
the
was
rabbit
great.
holes, and thank you so much for sharing that. Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yep, you got it.
I remembered.
Yeah, there you
It
go.
was like
That's how it happens, right?
being on the path. And it's interesting because I knew that when my dad passed in those first few days I like couldn't believe it, but I knew it wasn't an accident. Like he taught me how to use guns, and my dad had shot himself, and everybody in our family, everybody around couldn't cope with the reality. And they were like, oh, it was an accident. And it's not, I'm like, this is dishonoring his choice, first of all. And I was always the little kid that was like pointing out lack of integrity I just couldn't handle. I was like a truth seeker through and through to this day. And I was that annoying fucking kid that would be like, but you said, so I was like,
That's
no,
funny.
like, I know that this happened,
Yeah.
and I know that I am going to honor him in this and honor the life that he gave me through this experience. And we had always had discussions about, he had started his own printing company, and we had started to have conversations in my early 20s. What company could we start together that would help the world, that would help other people improve their lives? Like more of like a wellness, physical fitness type center.
Yeah.
But just imagine like that just being on a conversation, and then this happens. And suddenly, once I start healing 2 years later, I find myself gathering these tools that would eventually become the tool belt of the company that I've started to develop now.
This,
It's just
which
cool.
beautiful.
So, there's so you've given me goosebumps. Like I still have. I'm like it's like I'm like
So many
it's
times.
like 100%, and then it goes like
Yeah.
10%, and then it just keeps flaring up.
Cool.
Is like, oh my God, there's so much I can speak on that, but I want to. Again, thank you for sharing. This is such an honor to be a part of this conversation, that you're willing to share this with us. This is like, I'm so honored. And I feel that connection. And so, and again, I have empathy for the signs, and it's like so much of what you said just now, like if I were to hear what three of us are talking about right now, say 10 years ago, before I got into spirituality, before I had my dark night of the soul, before I started like my path, where I was just in the matrix, so to speak, I've been like this would maybe even make me uncomfortable, because we're so courageous in this vulnerability, and we're talking about angels and energy and synchronicities and like a guiding spirit guide voice and death and like things that make a lot of people very uncomfortable. And to me right now, fast forwarding to in the present moment, I'm like, this is amazing. And I believe that it's these conversations, whether we share in a podcast, personally, where we inspire others publicly, whether that energy goes right into like our mission, because I do want to tap into what you're creating now as well. I think that's really cool. And it's like some of the most beautiful times that people have inspired me, it's in this frequency. People have the courage to go to these places and share something vulnerable, and others are like, oh wait, you mean I'm not alone with this? And they relate to 1, 2, 3, 4, however many things in the story. And then their life is better for that. I really believe that. And so I'm like, my whole system's just like, I'm really excited about this conversation and want to honor the sensitivity of it as well.
Thank you.
And so with that, like, there's a beautiful synchronicity of the name of where you're teaching, the conversation that was had, the intensity of that experience. It seems like you were guided there, and you've been teaching children for, I don't know, how long have you been teaching children? I'm not sure.
9 years I taught Montessori.
You
yeah.
taught. Okay.
Yeah.
And so like my next question would be, so where you're at now, and maybe sharing with us the catapult or the beautiful magical story that's unfolded for you from that, and like how does that connect to your passion now, and what is your passion now with what you're creating, so people know? I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So and you're actually filling in the gaps of the story beautifully with your questions, because it's like,
Right on.
I'm like, oh my God, but this part. And so
Nice.
what had happened to kind of catalyze me kind of facing that trauma? Like I had been, like I said, I had been running from all of that. I had been teaching at the school called Another Way. The children are pure medicine. I just, I'm deeply in love with them forever and ever. And also that we'll circle back to this with what I do now, but that goes to every child within every adult, because I think that is truly our brightest, most beautiful light.
That's good.
So teaching in the school, I was skiing with my now boyfriend, but at the time it was our first run together. Again, kind of during my coming out of the shit show years. And I tore my ACL. First run of the ski season, torn. I knew it. I was under the lift, like, fuck, like, no, it's over. Like my streak of running. And the universe was like, or God, whoever was like, you're not going to get out of this. Like, this is part of your path. So I'd been teaching at Another Way. She had been trying to get me to read this fat book, and I don't have it next to me. This fat book. It looked like a Bible. And I was just like, no, I'm good. Like, that does not feel like something I want to open up. I'm good. Like, I was running too. Like, I don't have time for that.
Who wants to read? I'm running.
Yeah. I'm like teaching and then I'm running after school. And so I tore my ACL. I drive home to New York for surgery, and I get surgery. A week after surgery, I'm crutching through Barnes and Noble. And in the wrong section, in the cooking section of Barnes and Noble, is this book that falls off the bookshelf and hits me in my leg. And it's called The Course in Miracles. So
oh, Marianne Williams. Okay.
Ooh.
It's not a Marianne Williams book, but she does speak to A Course in Miracles. This is the OG, like, what
this
she
is the one she's speaking to in her book.
Yeah.
Yep.
So talk about, like, I go from like the nothing to like the full everything. And this is kind of a theme in my life. This is part of me being born on a Scorpio full moon during Taurus season, is like, I don't do things just a little bit. And the universe doesn't give me opportunities to learn just gently. It's like, oh, by the way, boom, like, and so it hurt. Like, I remember being like, okay, I'll get the fucking book. Like, so I got the book and I was kind of like, ow. I started to read that book. It was weird. During that time, a friend from high school just kind of connected with me at the time and started sending me music. He started connecting me with artists like Trevor Hall. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Oh, my favorite artist of all time.
Xavier Rudd and Nako. It's like my trine that got me through those first years of my healing. That music was like, how did he know? And he also introduced me to Ram Dass. So that was kind of like my first spiritual teacher, aside from A Course in Miracles. I didn't have a teacher. I just had this shit like flying off bookshelves and from friends in high school, just like in my path. Like, the universe is like, I had to like catch this shit, like quarterback and like run with it and see what happened. And so I, again, lost track of the question. But
that's fine. This is beautiful. No, this is so much fun. It's like, we'll get where we need to go, and I know it's like, and I can definitely ask it again. I wanted to touch really quick, is that there is, again, I have an amazing amount of empathy from my journey, just like crazy synchronicities. So we may have to have you on for a second episode or something. I don't know, but this is fantastic.
Love that. Or like, if you have time to share, I don't know how time-wise what you guys have.
Yeah, I mean, I can share some, because I haven't shared this on the podcast. I don't want to go too long. We're always trying to find an interesting balance of like honoring you as the guest and like us sharing and participating, and not like full interview, but not hogging the time. And so it's always
I love the
waxing
share
and waning. So so two things came up. Like, one, I got to meet Nako. So craziest thing, like right when my spiritual journey unfolded 8 years ago, like same thing, Xavier Rudd, Nako, and Trevor Hall. Those were the artists I listened to like all the time. Almost went to 2 of Trevor Hall's concerts. The woman I was dating was my yoga teacher. The woman I was dating, like, her friend knew Trevor Hall. They went to temple together. Like, it was wild. And even like the signs of like, where you're like, the book hit me. Like, there's so much synchronicity and serendipity and spiritual beauty in that. Like, I don't even know where to start, because it defies statistics. It defies anything that the mind's like, oh, well, that kind of, it's like, no, it made no sense. It was the book was in the wrong section. It literally hit me in my leg. And that you had the awareness and the openness, like how we all perceive things differently. Like, there's a choice in how you choose to perceive that. And I think that's an interesting thing too, because I've had conversations of, on the spectrum, people that like, that could have happened to someone and it's like, meh, or they get upset. and that could have happened to someone, and like they could take it even further than you took it and like go and meet the author and who knows what. But like, I think there's a beautiful awareness and agency and choice, using Joe's word agency, of like when these things happen, how are we choosing to respond to it? What meaning do we give it? And so like when my journey unfolded, I remember I had dabbled in yoga and meditation, simple hatha yoga, for like, I don't know, 5 months, ended up dating my yoga teacher, and then I'm getting all these strange books. Same thing. I didn't have a teacher. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have a therapist. I didn't have a mentor. I was just riding the wave of like, this makes sense. This spiritually is aligned. This sign came out of nowhere and it seems loud, and my intuition's like screaming at me, pay attention and take some action on this. And so I had 7 different signs, and this is what led me to travel the world. I had 7 different uncorrelated signs I would call positive omens of like, you need to go to Bali. I'd never been to Asia, and I knew no one there, and there was no logical reason I should go. And so it was like, I go into Amazon and it's like, Eat, Pray, Love, the story about where she goes to Bali and this and that. And I was like, read a book someone gave me, a hard copy, and the first sentence is, I'm in Bali. And it went on and on and on. And I met a guy in Encinitas at like a fire slacklining, like woo-woo hangout. And he's like, oh, bro, I just got it back from Bali, man. It's amazing. It just kept going. I didn't even know the dude. Like, and I was like, okay, God, source, like, I got to go. And it definitely was a tension in my family. It didn't make any sense. I garaged so the woman I was dating too, like, she was not the happiest about it, because I'm like, I'm going to go for 6 weeks. And I literally had, like, I went online and I looked up Ashtanga Yoga Bali, and I found a retreat that was 30 minutes outside of Ubud, which is where the woman in Eat, Pray, Love lived for a while. And the family that I live with knew the author of Eat, Pray, Love because she would frequent their restaurant. Like, crazy. The synchronicity is just exploded 8 years ago for me. So I have so much empathy again for what you're sharing. My system's just like, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna find this yoga retreat. I found it. I emailed them like, do you have any spots? And it was like a week later or 10 days later. And he's like, yeah. So that's how I ended up going. Like, I listened, I inquired, and I think to what you're saying, like, things just fall in place. And Joe and I have talked about that. Like, life's happening for us, and we open up and we soften. And I've definitely gone up and down in my ability to do this with life's stresses and stuff. But like, we just kind of relax, and it's like, hey, this may not make sense, it may be uncomfortable, but like, life's happening for me. Let me listen and follow and see where this goes. And that led me to a 6-week trip, turned into a 2-month trip, turned into me coming back, garaging my car, canceling my phone, canceling my insurance, locking down all my accounts and my finances, and having a one-way ticket to India with a 10-year visa. And I didn't know when I was going to get home, or when I didn't know if I'd be there for 10 years or not. And so all that came up in what you're sharing, because that's when my life changed in a very positive way. My heart opened, me as a soul opened. I connected with life. I got out of the matrix. I met people I never would have met. And I started finding myself. And so getting back to you, and actually I want to pause. Joe, do you have anything to share? Like, because Joe is an amazing story, by the way. He is a very humble dude.
I'm just curious.
He has such an amazing story.
Podcast today so we can all share. I love it.
Joe, is there anything resonating
I
for you,
appreciate
man?
that.
Yeah.
Oh, so much,
Like-
so much. I was just also just excited by y'all's energy and that connection too.
Yeah.
Excited to see and hear that. And I would love to share that. I do think I would love to have you on again, because I think there's so much more to dive into here, and I'm not feeling called to like bring that up right now,
sure.
but I would love to if you come back.
Cool.
But I was so interested in both of yours. Just like, there's so much guiding happening in this, like the synchronicities, you can just see the thread of universe, God, again, like whatever's guiding that, even in the aspects where you're feeling isolation, feeling loss. Like, there's this very clear thread of the universe directing. I mean, the book story of, I mean, so much of that. And then I'm interested. Ask this to you, Kimmy. Like, how do you continue to lean into, continue to develop and cultivate that intuition that that was so clearly showing up in that source, so clearly, even when you couldn't necessarily see it, it kept, in your words too, like, I mean, very forcefully showing you there is another way, and opening your eyes to that. I, saw this in Dustin's story as well, but just, I'm so interested in how that continued to develop your connection with yourself, connection with your intuition, and I'm interested in how you continue to lean into that, how you continue to honor that clearly divine guidance that's happening within you, but is you, and just keeps pointing back to that.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a great question, because it's interesting. I've gone through waves, and I think there was a period of time, maybe a year or two, where I was very rigid in my practices, where it was like Qigong, then exercise, and then an hour of yoga, and then breath work, and then journaling. And it was like not sustainable. It was like, and this is what spirituality looks like. And it's like, it's just not. And that's actually something that a teacher of mine that I was actually with over the weekend at a retreat, Taita Pedro, he spoke to this, that like spirituality does not look like dressed in white at the altar singing the right songs. It looks like living your fucking life and showing up to the classroom. And it's kind of what I'm really passionate about doing with my clients now. I'm sort of reevaluating my work as like, yeah, sure, I went through a coaching program, but I'm not a coach. Like, I am a teacher and I am a student. And what made me an excellent Montessori teacher of 9 years was that I also showed up as a student. And my children, children in that classroom, those students taught me more than I think I probably taught them. I don't know. My agenda wasn't to teach them. It was connecting them with the learning that they needed, connecting them with nature and with the experiences in the classroom where they could teach themselves. I'm very much for autonomous learning. And so as you've heard so far with all these signs that showed up for me, I was just like feeling empowered because all these tools were like handed to me out of nowhere. So I knew I was trusted by something higher than me. And it's interesting too, because wasn't really raised in a religious family. I really resonated with Native American philosophy because I craved some sort of connection. We need connection to source, to some creation energy. That's literally where we come from. It's the root of our sexual energy. Like we need to be connected to something. And so I had that connection, but I've always been connected to Jesus since I was little. I never went to church maybe twice, 3 times. And it was like, for some reason I felt him close. And then it took, the 24 years until my dad dies and I hear you can go another way. And then 2 years later than that, the book jumps off the shelf, and A Course in Miracles, it's all dictated through an atheist. It was Jesus that she was dictating. She actually became a chain smoker during writing the book because she was like, I don't fucking believe in what I'm channeling.
No way.
Yes.
I didn't know that part of the
Ellen
story.
Schumann is her name. And so it's fucking such a cool story because it's like the whole book is speaking to, so Jesus is being channeled and he's teaching another way. It's like NLP, but on a spiritual level. And so this was like my foundation on the spiritual path that, like, again, I had no teacher, which at times has really crushed my confidence in terms of what I can do. And then at the same time, I'm like, but I did it, like, the universe gave me the Montessori classroom and let me teach myself. It set my life up to be the classroom, just like I did for those kids, so that they could teach themselves and have like embodied learnings, not just someone pouring it into them consciously. And that's how I learn, is from experience. So I would say like how I show up and embody these practices over and over again and continue them is, first of all, they help me save my life. They help me connect with spirit. And my dad, he was, a major death in my path that that shook my world, to the point of like, I actually call his death my second birth. But I lost my nanny. I think she passed when I was 13. And, death has been a theme. It's been a theme. My great grandmother, I was really close with her. She passed when I was in 3rd grade. I was just so deeply like, well, where did you go? Was always this question. Where did you go? And I remember even as a little girl, I could see spirit in my room, and my parents would turn on the lights and be like, nothing's there. Look at, like, I'm like, yeah, duh. When you turn on the lights, like, you can't see what I was seeing, but like, I saw a dark shadow in the dark room. Like, that doesn't even make sense to me as a 7-year-old.
Why should it be darker than the darkness?
Yeah, what the
Like,
fuck
what?
is that?
Yeah.
So like, it's these tools were satiating and nourishing a need that I've had my whole life. And knowing what I know now about the beauty and the power, serious power of a child, and of that raw vulnerability and innocence, like, that was the core of who I was then. And it's like everything that was showing up in my path after he passed and healing myself was not only helping me heal, but it was meeting those needs that were never met. And so it's, yeah, it's like, and it's not that, I am a spiritual being and that's why it's authentic to me, and maybe other people don't stick to that. I don't believe that. But I was just on such a mission to create a transmission for people where they could also get inspired and find out, in what ways can they autonomously learn through the classroom that is their life. So that's where I mean, plugging into this spiritual level, it doesn't look the same. It doesn't look like meditation and breath work every day. Some days it looks like walking my dog. Some days it looks like gardening. It's different and it's flexible, and it's what feels right to me in that day, because it's how I access creative energy. And that's that's like where we start. I feel like that's what gives our actions, when we start to get an emotion, that's what gives our actions authentic fuel, and that really aligns with who we are, not anybody else, but what's authentic to us.
Oh, I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
That really aligns, I think, with me, and for so many. I think there isn't a specific path that works for everybody, or very often works for even two people. We are so unique internally, right down to the spiritual core, and that connection. And I love the example that your life is of just following that for you, and not, never in your story am I hearing like trying to put your story on somebody else, or teach like this is the way. It's just saying that there are so many ways, and there's other ways, and that connection was so powerful. And I can see the presentness of it woven throughout, and still even in your answer for today. It's just being here now with you, and open to that connection, and following that in the moment, and what brings you back to that. And I think that's it's just an incredible lesson to continue to probably refer back to. I know for me, it's something that I forget, in the universe is often not very gentle with showing me back that as well. And I love the clarity with which you can see the source and the guidance, but how much being present with it and honoring that in the moment has been that fuel, continues to be that fuel. I see that resonated and Dustin's and I's conversations in his life as well. But I think that's a huge message for people, because it's so easy to buy into, if you're not doing these things for this amount of time, you're not spiritual, or you're not being guided, and I just don't buy into that at all. And thank you for fleshing out that story around the Course in Miracles more. I didn't realize that. I mean, just that example is convoluted and yet so beautiful at the same time because of it. Like, even the person, dictating it through was confused about what was happening. but followed it, but did it, but showed up for it. And now we all benefit from that incredible work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to read that. I've heard of it before. I wrote it down. I'm gonna put it in the description. I definitely want to read
Cool.
that book.
Yeah.
Now you just inspired me. Yeah.
I was interested in your actually getting back to that, your relationship with the Course in Miracles and what that continued to look like in your life, because I haven't read the whole thing. I've read excerpts from it.
Yeah.
Because it is a slug to get through. Like it's a huge it's a huge work. There's a lot going on there. I'm just really interested.
Yeah.
That was the book that fell on you.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have any guidance, right? So I needed some. So I was like, here's your textbook.
Right.
I also had a knee injury, so I had to rest. I was on the couch. I had something to read, and I had stopped. So, this was really cool. So I find out, like, this is like last year, like so many years later, that I think I was given ketamine during that surgery. Because I came out of it and I thought I was like blessed by the angels, whatever it is. It's probably a combination of both. I couldn't drink or smoke weed after. I was just done with my two coping mechanisms. Like no substances, nothing. I actually had no tolerance. If I had 2 sips of a drink, I was like spinning and my body couldn't handle it.
Wow.
So now that I wasn't using substances, I was waking up at 4 a.m. This is like a very spiritually connected time. And I started to, within a month of starting to read this book, I started to see people's auras and my consciousness, and I took it for granted then, like as if it was, it's here now, so it'll always be here. This is just a side note, but for your audience or whoever hears this and you guys, like, it's so crazy how we feel so solid in our mental state, in our consciousness and our conscious set and setting in the here and now. And it is so, like, even if we don't feel like we're on the edge, like, it is so delicate. And it is something to give so much gratitude, just being able to say the words like, I love you, or to have this conversation. It's, that was shown to me, just how beautiful, because I knew everything. It actually opened me up. I guess it was opening the doors of enlightenment to me to show me what was possible. And I spent time for about a month or 2 in that space. I couldn't connect with people at this point because I was trying to share with people what I was aware of. And people were just like, you've lost your mind.
If they don't get it, it's just like, what is going on?
Yeah, like the guy I was dating at the time, I was even saying to him, I have to go back to Utah after this, and I know you're not going to come with me, but I want you to know that, like, whoever you choose to be with, like, he's trying to get me to, like, marry him. And I'm like, whoever you choose to be with, I can love you through her. Like, we are all I just knew we were all connected. And it doesn't matter. Like, it was so weird because now I can't really fully, I don't think I could, like, have that type of conversation in the relationship I'm in now. But I understood it then, and I took it for granted. So when I came back out here after that surgery and I'd been reading the book, it kind of went away. I could still see energy a little bit, but that knowing, that room of like the universal wisdom had shut, and it was sort of like, all right, now work for it, is what I felt. And it was like, this is the work. Like, you don't just get to live in that. And it wasn't realistic. Like, I wasn't going to be a normal, I wouldn't have been able to connect with people on a human level. And so I think there's a big piece of like, coming back to the life experience, and not, and just to speak a little bit about, like, I think when we're caught in the stories, like when I was even caught in the PTSD loop of finding my dad, or we're caught saying the victim story, I found my dad, whatever that may be. My childhood was hard. If you're not turning around and getting the lesson from that, and you're just getting addicted to telling the story, you have blinders on to the aspect of your life that is the classroom. You're not able to engage and activate or turn the lights on that sort of show you the spiritual element that is always around you. You are always guided. But when people hear that and they're like, oh, that's bullshit, my life's been so hard, it's because you're not looking through that lens. You're choosing to see something,
it's so good.
by seeing blue, you like, or I don't know if I'm trying to like come up with an analogy, but it's like by looking, the ocean, I can't also see the desert.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the ocean, or
Yep.
like if you're looking deeply into blue, you can also see like purple. I don't know.
Well, it's like,
That's
yeah, it's
just
like
like what I'm saying.
if you had, no, I feel what you're saying. It's like if you
Yeah.
have green tinted, glasses, and everything you see has a green hue to it, and
Yes.
like there is a whole nother reality, and you have the choice, you have the, again, Joe's word, you have the agency to, you can take those off, but if you've never taken them off, you don't
Mhm.
know any different, and you're so used to that. If someone tells you like, dude, that's not green, people can actually get mad at you. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, like I'm not seeing green, but like to each his own, right on, like I think that's what you're
Yeah.
saying, right?
Yeah. And it's just, so what A Course in Miracles did for me was it, like I said, it's sort of bridging into this conversation around NLP, because NLP was also something that helped me actually heal from the PTSD. I found an NLP and hypnotherapist here in Salt Lake, and I was like, this stuff is weird, and I like weird, and it's cool. And, he's in the LDS church, but he's like also unconventional because he's open to this stuff. Like, I really like him. I believe that there's many paths north, and I love when people are open to integrating and weaving what resonates for them,
Yep.
and not just putting themselves in a box. We're not meant to be in a box.
Yeah.
We're not. And a box is just a prison that we choose to be in. But it's, man, like the reading A Course in Miracles and coming back to it, because I've read it about 3 times now, cover to cover.
Whoa.
And it's different stages, 2 of those times where one was to process my father's suicide, one was to process the hardest thing I've ever gone through in relationships. Years later, it's kind of like affirming that, everything that came from my dad and abandonment, all of that. And then recently it was more just curious. Like, I'm curious what this is like when you don't pick it up in total crisis.
Ooh.
Like, what is this like when you just want to connect with it?
Yeah.
And between then, I open like a tarot card. Like, I'm like, what page am I going to open today? But the back, it actually gets you out of the loop because it starts to deprogram. There's a section in it that's just lessons. And so you'll start by like kind of reevaluating the meaning that you've assigned to the world around you. And every day there's a very simple lesson, a very simple mantra you spend about a minute working with. But man, does it's like NLP through a spiritual lens. And I can't wait for you guys to experience this, or anybody listening. Like, just have fun with those. If you're intimidated by the text, just play with the freaking lessons.
Yeah, I like
Everything
that.
else is a bonus.
I like that piece.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
This is so cool. I want to touch back, especially for the sake of time today, to see what else you'd like to share on like just taking all this inspiration, this wisdom, this awesome, this has like been such a fun journey in this conversation together. And like, how does that, like, however you want to share it, how does that tie into what you're doing now? How does that tie into your passion in life right now and serving others?
Okay. Well, man, my cat seems to be wanting. Okay, good. She's not going to get on the desk. Thought she wanted to be seen for a minute.
Oh, that's so cute.
She's always with me, whatever I'm doing in this chair. I would say I'm just really excited to share, first and foremost. Like, the vulnerability, being able to share vulnerably is something I felt I needed my whole life, but there wasn't always space for. So thank you both for holding the space for this.
Yes.
Because I believe that vulnerability speaks to the inner child within everybody that hears this. And, there's collective ripples beyond that. And so thank you for holding a space even beyond this podcast with me for people to share vulnerably, because it feels super safe. And curiosity is a form of love. And the curiosity that you guys bring, it's powerful. And often I'm someone who wants notes and things pre-planned to say, and I really was able to just speak from my heart today and to really trust myself more and more. It's been a big lesson this week. Trust myself more and more. Um, it's like I think I got that lesson. That's like the next one and the
The
next
next
one.
layer. Yeah.
Oh
It never
my
ends. It
gosh.
never
Yeah, like
ends.
go assist in an
Yeah.
ayahuasca ceremony and see what happens there. It was just like so many. So thank you. And
Yeah.
I would say, you know, the work that I do is like I really kind of spoke to it today. I gave you a real life example, and
Cool.
and I could go into the technical framework of what that looks like, but it's really organic to the person that shows up in front of me and usually what they're struggling with and how to make sense of it, how to make sense of crisis and trauma, and how to develop that direct line connection with your inner child, because it is the wisest part of you. And then what I'm excited for that's coming in the future is that I'm actually going to take this like deeper subconscious work that I do with adults working with their inner child and finding deeper meaning in their life and creating a curriculum with the Montessori Foundation I have so that the whole family has an opportunity to grow together.
That is so cool. And
it's a big thing.
Yeah, it's big, right?
It is.
It's heavy on my shoulders, but I am so passionate about it. And my heart is just like got more than enough fire to fuel it. So yeah.
I'm excited to stay tuned. I know you asked me for like a 3-word. Kimmy, we haven't really texted about this.
Thank you.
I've thought about it like every day, and I haven't had something that's like to share it, but I'm still working on it in my subconscious for you because I want to support what you're doing.
That's
I think that's really beautiful.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's I think energetically it might be, good space to start to wrap up. Seeing the nods, beautiful. So we always end now. Where is the best place for people to find you if they want to connect or learn more about your awesome story and mission?
Yeah, so right now, kind of even just fully wrapping up that story about what I do, I actually had to reevaluate myself as a coach because it just didn't feel authentic to what I was doing and my mission. So I have since hired a marketing team, and we're working on getting a website launched this summer with courses and podcasts and all of the fun things. People can find me there eventually. My business is called Inner Summit Center, and primarily I am active on Instagram right now, either through that Inner Summit Center page or Kimmy Gerrie.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was incredible.
Yes.
Stirred it so much inside, and just in a beautiful way. And I just thank you for showing up and being you and letting us see that and enter that journey with you, and get some of those lessons ourselves. I'm so grateful.
It was truly an honor. And again, so thankful for the space and both of you. And I can feel your intentions because they opened it up for a conversation. I haven't told that story so thoroughly, I think, ever out loud. So many people have said you should write a book that know me. And after this conversation, I feel hope that could happen. But I'm just really grateful that I had space to share it.
That is such a gift to hear that for you and for us. Like, thank you for sharing that. That means so much to me. It's that's a prime example of why I'm doing this. So thank you.
Right.
And I'm certain we're going to have you on. So again,
let's do it. I know we have so much more to talk about.
Yeah.
I can see in the future, Kimmy, the 7th episode. Welcome back. Like, no. Well, have a great week. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Keep up your awesomeness, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Both
Till
of you
next
too.
time.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Kimmy.
You too.